Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Sales Gambit. I'm your host Ashish, CEO of Convin, a conversation intelligence platform for the sales team. In today's episode for the Sales Gambit, we have Thibaut. Thibaut is the CEO and founder at SalesLabs and the Selling Advantage community and co-host of the B2B Sales Podcast. Thibaut is dedicated to training and coaching B2B sales teams to start more conversations and turn prospects into customers, and he specifically focuses on B2B tech sales. In today's episode, we will be mostly talking about how early stage startups can book more meetings from outbound sales. Hi, Thibaut. We're really excited to have you on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ashish. Really glad to be talking with you about outbound sales.
Sure. So, Thibaut, the first question that we ask every other guest who comes into that podcast is, how did you get started? How did you started doing what you're doing today, and what has been your journey, so that people can understand where you're coming from?
Sure. So basically, I've been doing sales since I'm 15 years old. When I was 15, I was living in Switzerland, in Lausanne, and I wanted to do my private pilot license. So I asked my parents if they could finance it, and they told me no. So I asked my grandparents if they could finance it, and they told me no. But they told me I could actually just go and find a job at the airport, so I could get into the, try and find how it works. I went to the local airfield, and I started selling airplane cleaning services. So fast forward to basically 3 years ago. So I started to do B2B sales in 2015, which is actually now 7 years ago. And I grew the French market for a company called Applause from 0 to 2.5 million of euro of recurring revenue. And basically, I left this company to go into another company. And at some point, I was like really tired of making other people rich. So I said, okay, I'm going to just go on my own, become a solopreneur, and I'm going to do what I know how to do. I'm going to basically help other people with sales. And so it's been now 3.5 years I've been doing that, discovered a lot of things. And what I'm doing now is more training and coaching tech sales people. And as you said, I have a community, I have a podcast, got some online products, some corporate training, and tons of different things. So that's basically what I'm doing.
No, we're really glad to hear about that. And a lot of people that I meet generally say that they got into sales by chance, but it seems like, you got into sales at a very young age, and, which was probably for one of the things that you wanted.
Yeah. So basically, I think sales is, I didn't just land in it by chance. For me, I've always wanted to do business and just to, make money and just like, be in business. And it happens that being in sales is one of the best way to learn how a business runs and how to make it work. So for me, it was really by design. And I didn't just like fell into sales. I really wanted to do it. And super happy about that.
Sure. Great. I'm sure you would be working with a lot of companies, right? And some of them might be in early stage of the startup life, or some of them might be on the growth phase of startup life, right? We would focus on the early stage of startup life at this point in time and understand how sales should be done at early stage startups. The first question that I have in that series from you is, what is your view on sales-led model versus a marketing-led or a product-led growth model for early stage startups? What should a startup do? Should they focus on sales-led model or the product or marketing-led models?
So great question. So let me clarify. When you mean sales-led model, you mean they are generating their opportunities mostly through outbound. When you mean marketing model, yes, it means they are mostly through inbound, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I think they should do both. The idea for me is that if you're doing pure outbound with just cold calling, it can be, it can work, it's proven to work, but it's a really tough playbook to actually put in place. Where my idea is that instead of just doing purely inbound or purely outbound, what you're going to have to do is to use what I call digital footprint. So when you go on LinkedIn, for example, and if you're selling to people who are on LinkedIn or Twitter or any kind of social network, you can use what they leave as a footprint, like likes, comments, profile views, and these kind of things, as good excuse to get in touch with people. So that I call that triggers. So my idea is that you should do a bit of both. You should use what already exists and then start conversation with this outbound mindset where you're going to build sequences with clear cadences, some messaging around problems and teasing around solutions for that. So that's how I think you should do it in any stage, but especially when you're early on. let's say, producing content on LinkedIn or using existing content or even commenting on other people's posts is a great way to get started. That's going to make outbound a lot simpler for you.
Makes sense. So you're basically focusing or emphasizing on mixed usage of sales-led model and the marketing-led model, so that early stage startups can generate more meetings, right? If I have to
Absolutely.
ask you a follow-up question there, right, which I want to understand, for an early stage startup, it's very difficult to put up resources everywhere, right? You can't have a very large team of salespeople and then the marketing people and everything like that, right? Uh, if they have to choose one, and let's take an example that they're a SaaS company, if they're building a SaaS product, what should they choose effectively to get at least some sales coming in, and then kickstarting different things for them?
So just for the record, I'm actually running my business by myself. No one else is working there. And I've got a lot of free time and I got a lot of sales and inbound coming through. So I do it mostly through content. For me personally, I post very often on LinkedIn. I get a lot of inbound leads coming from that, but I also get a lot of people who are liking and commenting what I'm doing, and then I use that to do some outbound to them. So that's what I would do first. I would really put my thoughts out there. And when you're a founder, you can talk, for example, if you're selling to HR leaders, you can talk a lot about HR problems, HR initiatives in 2022, and that's going to attract these HR leaders, and then you can start conversations. So what I would say is if you take your full day, you would think of, producing content and doing your outbound maybe for 2 hours a day. And that's going to be like a quarter of the resources you have if you work 8 hours. And that's what I would actually start doing. Put your thoughts out there, make sure you engage with your community and your audience, and then start conversations from that.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So you're saying that you will mostly go for the marketing content generation and then getting those inbound things coming into you, and then later on, if possible, switching to the sales part.
Absolutely.
Got it. So the couple of more things around the same thing. Let's say we want to start a sales-led model, right? Which means reaching out to the cold leads and educating them about the company. When the company is young, it does not have a lot of resources and nobody knows the brand name as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
How should they get started in that case from the sales-led perspective?
So it's the same for marketing, but basically the first thing you need to do is to understand your ideal customer profile. So for me, it's very simple. I use the ICP matrix, I call that, where it's a mix where you have the ideal customer companies, the type of companies you want to go after. For example, all kind of companies based in UK that have a seed funding of, I don't know, under 1 million could be an idea. And then you want to see what are the job titles you want to go after in these companies. So co-founder, CEO, CCO, whatever. Once this is clear, you know exactly what type of companies you want to go after and the people in there, you have to understand what are the problems they are going through every day. So what are they working on that you can help with? What are they working on? What are the problems they have that you can make a dent on? And basically, once you understand that, your messaging should be about this problem. So I see very often people starting talking about their USPs, their features and everything. Really, the goal is to understand what problems can I solve? Talk about this problem, push on that problem, and then tease a potential resource to get a reply. And the idea is that if you switch your mindset to actually booking meetings or closing someone on the spot to starting conversations, you're going to get a lot more conversations going, then a lot more meetings, and then a lot more opportunities that are ending, as close opportunities. So really problem, and then, teasing a solution for that.
Makes sense. So basically you're saying figuring out the right ideal customer profile, that should be the first thing, and then figuring out the right messaging and then start reaching out to them through different mediums. Again, I know that you have already spoken about email and LinkedIn being your preferred channels and not being the cold calling. What do you think, where should agents focus today on out of these three channels, or any other channel that you can probably advise?
So I think it all depends on who you're trying to go after. If people are very LinkedIn intensive, for me, tech sales, everyone's on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. You can use this as your primary channel. But I will use email, for example, as a other channel. So the idea is there's not always one channel or one way to go after. Just think about where the people you're trying to reach out are hanging out. If you're trying to sell into the Mittelstand in Germany, which is SMBs, very traditional, cold calling will actually be the way to go. And you can use a bit of email, but very often people are, not really a lot on emails. So it should be a mix very often, but you have a main kind of channel, which is where people are hanging out. And for me, the idea is that the more channels you use, the more kind of surface you're going to have. the more chances you're going to get to start conversations.
Makes sense. A very quick question around the same thing. Let's say, a lot of time what happens is SaaS companies start targeting mid-market or upper mid-market companies, right? And sometimes the industries which are not, the people around them are not very much present on LinkedIn. For example, let's say real estate industry in US, right? And the traditional real estate firms that we have might not be available on LinkedIn all the time. Similarly goes for automotive industry or for example, consumer services industry, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone will be super active on LinkedIn in that case, right? So it becomes extremely hard in general, right, to even prospect the right personas and everything like that. What would be your suggestion to cater to such problems for them?
So again, you have to find out where they hang out. So real estate, very often they will, mostly work on the phone. So the idea is to, for example, in real estate agencies, you can find a lot of data on Google Maps, for example. So the idea is first to be able to build a lead list. You can buy some lead lists too, and then go after them mostly through cold calling or even walk-ins. That's what I would suggest. But what I would also suggest is to listen to experts on that. Cold calling, there's a lot of people who are talking about that, who can give you much better tips than me. But again, just understand the industries you're going after, their kind of, you could say, adoption of digital tools, and really think about that. If you're not willing to go after cold calling, and if you're really, you just like, no, you're never going to do that, then make sure you're going after the right market. And if you're going, if you know you want to go after this specific market, make sure you are like you're able to build some lead list and doing the right things, which can be walk-ins, as I told you about, or cold calling. For example, I had a customer early on when I was getting started. They were in Kenya and they were just doing walk-ins. So that was, a very interesting kind of prospecting strategies that was very different from what we do on LinkedIn, for example.
Makes sense. Makes sense. This brings me to the next question, which is, how do you execute different steps of sales-led model properly? And I can think of 3 steps at this point in time. One is obviously prospecting. Second is reach out, and the third is meeting bookings. And where you finally book the meetings. How do you suggest someone execute the prospecting properly?
So basically, the first thing, there's 2 steps in the kind of lead finding or prospecting part. The first will be you build a lead list. So for example, if you want to go after a top 100 account list, you will build this lead list. And then what you're going to do is find exactly the type of people you want to go after based on their job titles, for example. And then you're going to try to find some data that suggests that they have a problem you can solve. So that can be post likes, that can be like in blog posts, webinars, podcasts. There's tons of data that you can use in there. And the idea will be, you have this list, you have some specific triggers you can find. And then you say, for example, if someone in HR is talking about how challenging it is to engage employees in remote, and they talk about that into a podcast, and you have an employee engagement solution, you could use that, and say, hey, I listened to your podcast, and at minute 25, you talk about this problem. I'm curious, how are you solving this, specific problem? That would be a good way to do that. The other way for me, which I really like and I use all the time, is looking for what I call LinkedIn magnets. So it's a thing called the Oasis effect, where basically when someone is really famous or really has a lot of engagement on LinkedIn, these people will attract a lot of likes and comments, and you're going to be able to use that just like, this person would be just like an oasis in the desert, where they attract animals, they attract life. And if you want to go and hunt, you have to go and hunt for the oasis instead of hunting one by one in the desert. So you go after that, find these people. And then if someone, for example, is talking about SDR sequences and they get like hundreds of likes, I will go. And then I will be able to find a lot of head of business development, VP of sales, who are exactly my ICP. And then I'll be able to mention the post as a trigger. I say, hey, notice you like this post of this person on SDR prospecting. And then, I'll be able to start conversations. So that's a very simple way to start a lot of conversations that are relevant and do personalization at scale. And so that's for the first part, the prospecting part. Then the reaching out, what you need to do first is to build a sequence. So how many touch points you want to go after, what channel you want to use, what's the media in the channel, what's the cadence between each touch point, and when do you stop? Once this is clear, you will actually start writing what you want to say in each of these touch points. And for me, I use a very simple trigger method, which can vary a bit, but it's like trigger, why am I getting in touch with you? question, do you have a problem, a specific problem with, that I can help with? Then teaser, then you tease a potential solution to actually solve that problem. And then a simple call to action. Are you interested in learning more? And in 38% of cases, in my case, I get a reply. People say yes, interested or not interested. And when they are, interested in the resource, you navigate the conversation. So you share the resource and then you ask them for some feedback. You really try to understand, is the resource useful? Do you have this problem? And then you ask what I call a negative reversing question, where you say, would it be a bad idea to hop on a call? And then basically that's when you book the meetings. So for me, 38% reply rate, 11% meeting rate, I just do it this way.
Interesting. So very quickly, right, I would ask one related question around prospecting. There are a lot of challenges that people face while doing the prospecting, right? One of the fundamental challenges that I have seen people facing is how do they even prioritize prospects effectively? There are hundreds and thousands of prospects, right? Who do you reach out to first? Who do you reach out to later? Is there something that you use to sort of figure this out better?
So basically what you could do is find like a matrix of prospects that are interesting. So very often what's going to be important for prospecting is to find like the grade of the people you want to go after. So grade is based on the firmographics, or, if I'm going after like a VP of sales of a scale up, that has just raised like 200 million, that's going to be a top priority. And so basically you find out like the grade in one end, and then the score, which is the behavior. So are these people like posting often, or are they liking a lot of like posts that are interesting for me? And you can do a matrix. So you're going to have some people who have a high grade, high score, top priority. Then you're going to have people who have low grade, high score. They're going to be like third priority. Then you have like high grade, low score, second priority, and low score, low grade, don't prospect them. That's what I would do.
And have you seen what according to you would be the role of research and customization in better prospecting and better reach outs?
Research and customization. So that's one of the parts that is the toughest for SDRs, is they either spend too much time researching and personalizing, or not at all. And so for me, the idea with that, I told you, like in the kind of prospecting part, is really finding people. So you're going to find triggers. You're going to find like if someone likes a post about SDR challenges, that's going to be a great trigger. So what you're going to do, instead of looking for leads, you're going to look for triggers, and then that's going to attract some leads. So that's really the idea, is instead of hunting for prospect, hunt for the oasis where they are hanging out, and then you're going to be able to find a lot more data.
One of the aspects is that, when companies reach out, right? One of the major reach out challenges that I have seen, apart from prospecting challenges now that we can go for, one of the major reach out challenges is to have a better messaging as compared to the larger companies out there. So for example, if I reach out to you and I'm a startup versus one of my competition, which is a larger known brand, reaches out to you, you will be fundamentally more inclined to reply to them and try to explore their services first. How can early stage startups cut through noise in this specific scenario?
So I would argue that is not really the case, because what's going to make you reply, obviously there's going to be brand awareness, but at some point there's going to be also the messaging you have. And it's not because you're a rep for a big company that your messaging will be better. It's actually very often the opposite. What you're going to notice is that when you go into a big company, they will go on onboarding and they will just start like telling how great they are, how amazing it is, how great of a choice it is that they worked. And then in your onboarding, they're just going to show you and try to upload all the data and all the knowledge about the company, the product, the features. And then what's going to happen is that people will try to regurgitate this feature and this knowledge, and try to really like get use that into their messaging. So what you can do if you're a smaller company is focus on the problems of your prospects. Again, ICP metrics, understanding their problems, and then you say, hey, noticed you have done this thing, or you have like this post. Do you have this problem? If you do, there's a potential solution. Just are you interested in learning more? When you're doing that, you're just already doing so much better than most people, even the ones in big companies. So don't think that it's because it's a big company that they have better reps. I would actually argue against that. Very often when you're a smaller company, if you understand the problem really properly, you're going to get a lot more conversations started.
Understood. One major aspect of challenge, or one major challenge that a lot of early stage startup face generally is no shows, right? Even if the meetings are booked, a lot of people won't show. right? And this meeting no show might range from 10% to 25% very easily. How do
Yeah.
you suggest early stage startups handle no shows?
So why do you think they have no shows?
See, my perspective generally is that either they are not reminded on time and they get busy. Second, it's not important for them at all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
in which way is a second priority at all the times. So showing up on that conversation is not a lot important versus something else that can come my way, right? So these are the
Yeah.
two things. And third, I think is more like disengagement with the product, with the prospect. So generally what happens is SDRs big book the meetings, and then if the meeting is 2 weeks late, there's no engagement being done in that period.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think? What is your views on that?
So I think no shows are very often, you mentioned a few reasons, but often is people are pushing people into calls. So there's a bunch of things that are first the understanding of what is a discovery call or what is a call that is properly set. Very often, and it's always surprising, some people, some SDRs will prospect and then someone will say, we'll just ask them to kind of send them more details or whatever, and then they're going to send them a meeting invitation. So in that case, the problem is if you send me a meeting invitation, I won't accept it, or I will just no show because you didn't actually get my permission to do that. So first of all, the first thing they need to have is to make sure they're not pushing people into meetings and accept that people say no. And when they say no, they don't need to objection handle everyone. They just need to accept that maybe it's not the right time. So first of all, not pushing, not trying to always push people into meetings, really get the right people into meetings when they really want to do that. Second thing is check the name of your meeting, demo. No one has time to see a demo. I don't want to go and do a first call where you're going to just show up and throw up all your features and just waste my time. I want you to understand what are my problems, how if you understand these problems, how good is your understanding of my problem and how can you solve them or potentially help me solve them. And that's the problem is if I go, for me, I hate working and talking. So I hate talking to SDRs who are trying to sell me something because they just show up and throw up. They push me into demos and then they say, oh, you want to know more? Talk to my AE. I hate doing that. So I'm not the only one. And that's very often why you actually no show. And the best thing actually to get rid of a salesperson is to say, yes, just send me more details or send me an invitation. I will come, I will accept the invitation, I will get rid of you. And then, I'm just going to not be able to show up. So that's really the thing is understand that your goal should be to start conversations. And then when the conversation goes well, you navigate it to get a meeting. When you do that, you may be having a bit less meetings, maybe 10 to 25% less, but these actually will be the meetings that will actually always show up. So that's what I would do.
And I fundamentally agree to that also, right? If you're not booking the meetings in the right way, eventually a lot of people are not going to show up. And even if you're trying to push the demo down their throat for the first time, it's very difficult for anyone to digest that. The next understanding that I would love to have is, in early stage startups, it becomes difficult to assign targets to any person on the team, right? Because you don't know, right? Nobody knows your brand name. Nobody know how many meetings you might be booking or how many meetings one person can book. How do you decide for targets in early stage?
So the idea is you don't have historical data very often. So the idea for me is to first understand your closing altitude. So for me, what I would say is you'll take some assumptions. You'll understand, okay, if I'm a founder, how much money do I need to make to either raise money or to either pay my cost and be self-sufficient and do bootstrapping. So you understand what's the revenue you need, what's the revenue target you need. Then you understand what's your sales process. So typically it's going to look like you're going to prospect, you're going to end up into a discovery call, then you're going to end up into a use case or a demo call, basically. Then you're going to end up into like a proposal call, then a negotiation phase and close one. So you do define all these stages. There's typically five stages. Then you're going to see what's the conversion rate. So from prospecting, if I prospect 100 people, how many will reply? I don't know, like maybe 10. And then if out of these 10, how many will go into a call? Maybe one. And then out of these people into the call, how many are actually moving to the next stage? And then next stage until closing. And then when you're in there, you calculate back everything. So if I want to do like 1 million euro target by the end of 2022, and I'm closing 100,000 euro deals, I need to close 10 deals. So to close 10 deals, I just need to backtrack. And then maybe I'll understand that I have to do 50 discovery calls to close 10 deals. And to book 50 discovery calls, I need to contact 500 people. Then I know 500 people is how many I need to contact over the year. Divide that by the number of days you're working, and then you know exactly how many prospects you need to contact. So that would be the way I would do that. Start by the end, understand your process to go through that. So from total stranger to customer, what is happening, understand everything that is happening, and then basically calculate everything, do a bit of padding to make sure that you can reach that, and then you'll be able to have some clear targets. So always keep that in mind, and that's a good way to get started.
In your experience, have you seen brands enjoying better outputs from their representatives in terms of target versus early stage companies who don't have established brand in terms of booking the meetings?
So very often it's not so much related to the size of the company, it's really more related to the problem they're solving. So you have huge companies that are very quick to raise money and they don't solve a problem. So in that case, that's not going to work. And you have companies that are really smaller and that are really solving a big problem. I'm an advisor for one called Tolstoy, which is like a video prospecting tool. And I can tell you, they book meetings all the time. So simple for them because they are really solving a problem around video prospecting and personalization. So everyone's super curious. Everyone is actually really curious to talk to them. So it's so much simpler for them to book meetings than their competitor Vidyard, for example, where it's a lot harder because, you know, the product, the brand is actually more known, but it's more associated with, you know, different things. Some reps, for example, are way slower to reply. So big brands do not equate to actually better demos or more replies. So that's really the thing I would say to every founder. If you have a clear problem you're solving, people will be really curious to know how you can solve that. So really always lead with that.
Towards the end of the podcast, right, I would want to understand or love to hear about your reading recommendations where people can improve their prospecting and reach out skills and book more meetings.
So there's different things. So I can tell you external people. So for example, you may know Josh Brown. He's really a good resource on prospecting. You can listen to his podcast. Go check him on LinkedIn. He has really good resources. For me, in terms of prospecting, I have a lot of data on that. So I would say you can go on my website, SalesLabs.io. There's like a bunch of blog posts on my podcast too. I talk all the time about prospecting. So you can get a lot of data around this. And I even have like an online course, which is called the New Outreach System, which costs like €149, basically, where in that it's more than, you know, like reading, it's really like video courses. And then you have like worksheets and you're basically building everything we talked about. You're actually building that.
Makes sense. No, this is something that I totally agree with, that even if you read 100 books won't help you a lot unless you are really putting it to the use and, you know, learning continuously.
Yeah.
That's all the questions I had for you today. Thank you so much for joining us on Sales Gambit, and love to host you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ashish. It was a great conversation.
Sure. Thank you. This is your host, Ashish, signing off. See you next week with a brand new episode of Sales Gambit.